Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Gentleman's Summit. This is Robert Sanders. I'm coming to you from Phoenix, Arizona, and can't really say that it's hot here. We're actually in the 50 degrees today. I don't know the exact temperature, but we are in the 50s. And I want to welcome you back to another Gentleman's Summit. Really excited about the presentation on tonight. I will introduce the speaker here in a couple minutes. But Gentleman's Summit is something that we started a couple months ago. This will be our third edition of Gentleman's Summit. And we started this for men, to give men a platform to voice. Many times men don't have a platform where they can actually speak freely. But in addition to men, we also have, uh, uh, as of tonight, we do have subject matters that are open to the women as well. And tonight's subject is open to women. As I said, this is our third edition of Gentleman Summit. Our first edition, we had Keith Folks from Little Rock, Arkansas. And Keith is a young man that has built a lot of wealth, and he shared how to generate money and to protect your money. And he shared a lot of gems with us, a lot of valuable information about how we in the African American community can do better when it comes to our financial well-being. And last month we had a guest, Judge Bonner from Oklahoma City, Judge Anthony Bonner. And Judge Bonner actually shared the impact of the justice system on African American men. Did a great job on that presentation. We had a lot of questions, a lot of positive feedback for that. I will say, and I will share this again at the end, but next month we're going to be talking about football. We're going back to men only segment, and we will be doing the month. It's not actually the Super Bowl month, but it will be getting close. So we'll be talking about football and sports in general if men want to choose to do that. But our presenter tonight is none other than Dr. Neal Hambright, a recognized consultant and expert in human resource management. He is a expert at the federal government level. He also is a co-author of the Autonomous Career, Freedom of Time and Space in Your Chosen Workplace. He works for the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, and he is well respected in his career. I did tell Dr. Hambright that I was going to just let him introduce himself because he has so many attributes in regards to his career. I remember, I'll just share this real quickly and then we'll have him get started. He's everywhere. I think last week he completed the attending, going to every state in the nation. I think that was about a week ago. And just a few days ago, he was actually in Hawaii, but you never know where he's going to pop up. My family and I were in, I think we were in Detroit, and I heard this voice behind me, and it was Dr. Hambright. Another time, I think we were in Indianapolis at the mall, and lo and behold, somebody walked past us, and man, that's Neal. We call him Neal, and it was him. And then another time, this time he was actually working for the FBI. I got a ring at my door, and I usually don't answer the door, when people come up. But I looked through there, and that face looks familiar. lo and behold, it was Dr. Hambright. And I'm saying, how in the world did he find my house? Because he didn't have my address. I said, hopefully he didn't tap into the FBI database. But at this time, I'm going to present to you Dr. Neal Hambright. Take your time, be at liberty, Dr. Hambright. Thank you.
Thank you so much there, Dr. Elder Sanders. Praise the Lord, everyone.
And before you get started, I'm sorry, Dana, there will be time for questions and answers as well. Thank you.
Okay. All right, then. Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. I just count it an honor and a privilege to come before you all today. Again, my name is Dr. Neal Hambright. I'm one of the senior human resource specialists with the United States Department of Veteran Affairs. And I've been in the federal government a little over 12 years, going on 13 now, believe it or not. I've worked in various federal agencies throughout the United States, from the Department of Veteran Affairs to the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. I've worked at the Department of Agriculture, Department of Justice, FBI, and just quite a few agencies throughout my career, but most of my career has been in human resource management. I do human resources on the federal level, which is kind of a little different in the private sectors because most of our hiring practices are regulated by the federal government in terms of how we not just hire people, but federal careers, you actually appointed into federal positions because we're held to a higher standard in office or so. Then hopefully probably today in our presentation, I'll give you an opportunity at a time to, ask some questions that maybe about how the federal hiring system work, what are the things that we look for federal employment? Because one of the largest employers in the world is actually the federal government, believe it or not. It's DOD is one of the largest federal agencies in the federal government. I think the Department of Veteran Affairs, we're the second largest to DOD. And then there's other federal agencies, there's so many of them out there, and they're always looking for talent or so, but a lot of times some people, they just don't know what to do or where to start in terms of getting into federal employment. I know if that's something you're interested in, definitely feel free to ask me any questions you may have as it pertains to that process and what it entails or so. I'll be happy to share you some pointers or some information. I know last week with Attorney Bonner, when he was online, looked like most of the audience on there, they were like entrepreneurs as well on that particular forum there. So I was like, let me see there as well. As Elder Sanders alluded to, I am an author. I actually wrote and authored this book. Let me see if I can share my book with you all on the screen. It's called The Autonomous.
I'm going to see if I can give you permission there too. You might need permission.
Okay.
Did you? Yeah.
Okay.
Is that better? Can you?
Let me see what I have. I think that's your screen there. Let me see if I can share my screen. Okay, yeah, the recording can stop. Okay, share. Let me see if I can share.
Okay, do you need me to do? Welcome, everyone.
Let me see.
Let me do that one more time. Try it now to see if that will allow you to share.
Okay, yeah, it didn't look like it allowed me to share, but nevertheless or so, I'll drop it over here in the chat box for everyone to, in their own time, and they could take a look at it and see from there. Pretty much the autonomous career is it's a self-guided a tour book or so for individuals to kind of align their kind of career like with their passion or so. with the growing demands with life and family, education, and various responsibilities, a lot of times people have a difficulty like finding like that work-life balance. And in order to maintain that balance, individuals, we must be intentional in terms of planning and navigating, our lives, especially as it pertains to our. I was inspired to write The Autonomous Career during the pandemic, and pretty much the autonomous career brings awareness regarding career freedom and how you could take responsibility to do so, as well as tools in the book. Inside the book, there have like a questions of tools as well as a gamut of questions that the reader must be able to ask in order to kind of see where their passion and their desires fall into place or so. And then if it's not in alignment, it's designed to get you in alignment so that way you can execute and create the career that you desire. This book, it does, as I mentioned, present, there's some questions where you can actually fill in and write that's allotted for the reader, so that way the reader can take an active role in building the career they envision while impacting their sphere of influence as well. So that's what the autonomous career is actually about. Or so it's a great book. I've traveled quite a bit, with the autonomous career. So just promoting it in different countries, not countries, but different cities within the United States or so, just to kind of help individuals to have freedom of their career. Because when your passion is kind of aligned with your purpose and it's alignment with your career, that would lead you to a sense of freedom that you would have in your workplace, where you'll be able to kind of to do more things, to be able to help people, leave a legacy, and create a lasting impact. So that's kind of like what the autonomous career is about in the book that I just recently wrote and published. So there we have that there. Next, I would like to see if I can share my screen, because that was going to lead me into like a brief presentation that I wanted to share with you all on today as well. So far, did anyone have any questions? Okay. No questions. Okay.
I do that show that multiple participants can share. Have you pulled up what you have?
Wait, let me see. Yeah, I have what I have. Let me see if I can share it over here. Allow Zoom to share your screen, open system preference. Okay. Okay, share my. Okay. Okay. Desktop. Let's see. This is let's see. Looks like it's not allowing me to share for some reason. And let me try this. No share. Security, privacy, grant access. Yeah, for some reason it's not allowing me to share. So that's a little unusual. Wait a minute, Zoom. Okay. Okay, then nevertheless, anyhow, or so, I'll go ahead and try to kind of talk about what I was going to share, regardless of that little technical glitch there. But what I was going to talk about today is I was going to talk about a subject that, kind of affects and impact many of us in many ways. And that particular subject matter is bias or so. What do you all think of when you think of the word bias, BIAS? And this is kind of like a spinoff from last week. I know Dr. Bonner, he talked about the justice system and particularly the impact that biases can have, towards African Americans in the justice system and the negative effects of that and how the justice system is designed. Today I kind of just want to take a look at the word itself and kind of look at some ways to see like what is bias. What do you all think of when you hear the word bias, BIAS? Anybody want to take a stab? Feel free.
Isn't that like unjust or?
Yes, this is Paul Lucas. You hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Paul.
Yeah, when I think of the word bias, I think mainly, first of all, the word prejudice comes to mind.
Okay.
Or not just prejudice, but simply the beliefs that we all have, whether they were instilled in us by our parents or just by society or by our experiences in life. And sometimes we don't even know that we're aware that we have them until, like we take a class or something and start to see other points of view. Then we discover really the truth about ourselves.
Wow, that is excellent, dear Paul. Anybody else want to take a stab at the word bias?
Well, for me, I
Okay.
think the word prejudice, kind of aligns with that word when you hear bias, kind of like prejudice comes into your thought process.
Okay, no, that's very good or so. And pretty much yeah, when we look at the word bias, that's pretty much what it means there. Bias is it is prejudice, like a favor or whenever a person is you know, against one thing, it can be towards a person, a group, um, is usually considered in a negative way to be, unfair or so. So that's one of the things that we look at when we see the word bias. And that's one thing that we're going to talk about today or so is that word. Um, Another question I want to ask is um, when it comes to biases and prejudice and everything, there's two categories that I kind of want to share with you. One of the known biases is known as implicit bias. Another word for implicit bias is unconscious bias. Just a show of hand, I have a diagram up, but since we don't have a diagram, what do you think of when you think of implicit or unconscious bias? What comes to mind when you think of that? I'm kind of throwing out a keyword here.
Those things that we're unconscious of, because sometimes we can just hear something and we didn't even know it bothered us until we heard it.
Excellent. Or so, and that's one type of bias that actually exists. It's called implicit bias, also known as unconscious bias too. And unconscious bias is probably one of the most common type of biases that exist. When we think about last week's lesson with Attorney Bonner, a lot of unconscious bias can be very, very dangerous or so because it's not even aware of. It's like a type of prejudice or stereotype that individuals have about certain groups of people that they're not consciously aware of. You know, somebody can just say a statement or something and thinking that they're being, comical or very innocent, and it turns out to be, you know, very, very biased or so. It can be very harmful. It can have a lot of negative consequences or so. But like I said, unconscious bias or explicit bias is the term that's actually used. It actually exists. Can anybody I want to take it a little further, like biases also exist for people of various races. And and if you the same color as I am, you definitely have your shares of testimony experiences with that. Biases also affect like ethnic groups, people gender identity, sexual orientation, physical abilities, and many, many more, or so that I'm going to discuss later on, throughout the presentation and stuff here. Particularly these things, have a tendency to affect us like negatively in some way, shape, or form. Has any of you all have ever, experienced, maybe unconscious bias or explicit bias, or, we ourselves, we can be biased or something too, because another thing I wanted to share with you all about bias, we all have biases in our life. There's no way to avoid it. It's just kind of like a reality that we all have. But one of the goals of my presentation today is to kind of make us all just to become aware or to bring an awareness of the types of biases that exist and then to try to formulate a solution on how we can maybe manage it or mitigate it or so. So does anybody want to share any experiences where they may have felt like they was either the cause of unconscious bias or may have said something that was biased and it may have affected your decision? Or maybe were you infected by somebody else's biases in maybe your life or experience that somebody may want to share? Anybody? I mean, don't be shy. I guess nobody.
Well, I
Let me
think
let.
I've had some maybe bias that was perceived, from my viewpoint. And in that respect, I just kind of held my tongue, rather than throw fire on the fuse. Now, when you're talking about bias, I know you're an HR professional, but it sounds like you're coming from more than just the workplace. You sound like you're talking in general terms for anyone.
Yeah.
When you were talking there, I was thinking about how that maybe someone could have that unconscious bias if from a workplace perspective, if they work, say, in this environment where it's kind of normal or okay to speak in certain terms, and then they get another position that's totally different, where it's not acceptable in that environment. And so they're pretty much unconscious of, to them, it's okay. But now they are in an environment where it's really not okay to
Mhm.
to do that.
Oh no, absolutely too. And that kind of if you were to see my notes, this kind of falls into a category of I have like over, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, about 16 different types of biases or so. And yeah, and the bias that you actually referred to, Elder Sanders, is called the contrast effect bias or so. And that kind of happens in the workplace where you're in this one setting, you're thinking this way and talking a certain way, but then you go into another setting and you're talking another way. Yeah, that's actually one of the bias. They call that a contrast bias or so. Yeah, so that's really good that you shared that experience, and then that actually happens in that way, and it can happen in an unconscious way. Does anybody else want to kind of share maybe an unconscious bias experience that they may have had or may have seen or witnessed?
I've seen Hi, this is Naisha. I've seen some unconscious bias when I was going to Phoenix College. One of the instructors, he said something about Black women as in regards to our hair, um, assuming something about, with the relaxed hair. And then also he also made a comment about Black women in regards to they don't commit suicide. Just he was saying things but had no facts or anything on it,
Wow.
speaking about our hair, and I'm just looking at like, okay, you're not even Black. Where is he getting this information? So, and then another thing I would say for me, because of my name, sometimes I've had it where people assume that I'm ghetto because my name is Naisha. They'll assume that because it's an Isha name or something like that. And I'm like, no, I'm not ghetto. Like, what this name actually has a meaning. Or they'll assume that I'm from somewhere in another place instead of getting to know me, trying to figure out why I have the name that I have. So those are just, I've experienced a lot of biases, especially in school.
Wow, that is amazing. Thanks for sharing that, Naisha. And actually, the bias that you had mentioned, that has a name too. It's called a name bias, or so as you just expressed. And then the other bias, I wouldn't quite put it in that category, but there's a bias called a beauty bias. I think the beauty bias is more towards like people like in Hollywood, and you got to, have the looks and the different things. No, but no, the name bias is really, really huge. Or so. I can recall the instance. Actually, it was an incident that occurred. How many of you all know Aretha Franklin, Detroit, Michigan, Data?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, everyone knows Aretha Franklin. Let me see, Paul, Lee, Aisha, you all know Aretha Franklin?
Yes, of course.
Okay,
Oh, yes.
okay.
Yes.
Well, you all know Aretha, she recently passed away, and her funeral was televised on national TV. Are you all remember
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Okay, then. Well, there was an incident that happened with one of our well-known beloved pastors of that church there, the Honorable Elder Charles Ellis. He's a pastor of that church, Greater Grace in Detroit. Very respected, well groomed man of God there in the city of Detroit there. But in this particular setting at Aretha Franklin's funeral, incidental occurrence that happened, and mind you, the audience here is a national audience, or so. It's not a church audience or anything like that. And I think knowing Bishop Ellis and the way that he is, I mean, he's a very joking, kind of comical type of person in his own right, no harm or anything like that. But one of the young ladies, as you all know, Ariana Grande, she became the centerpiece of discussion. And and mind you, Bishop didn't know her or know these stars or people named. They were there for that event, that historical event for Aretha Franklin funeral or so. And he got up and made a comment, as Naisha alluded to, Elder Sanders, when you left away, and made a reference to her name, as if, he made a joke about, I didn't know who Ariana Grande was. I thought it was a new menu on Taco Bell. And some people laughed and thought it was jokingly, but mind you, this isn't a church audience or people that know the bishop personally. This was a national audience, and how that was perceived and taken, it really caused like some huge backlash for him, to the point where, he did eventually apologize and get it right there. But that's a big thing, or so, that bias there that could exist. Not saying that he was a biased person, but just the fact that he alluded to her name in reference to Taco Bell or something Mexican related or so too. It really kind of brought an awareness. And I know for him that was an example of an unconscious bias or so, how it was perceived to be unconscious just by that little small act of thinking. Now, did any of you all see or follow that, or that was just kind of like not even like important or nothing like that. That's
Well,
one of
I think it was kind of like one of those in your face moments. If especially if you watch the news, you
Mhm.
know, it was all over the news, and you know, it was a lot of exposure for, you know, several weeks for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that's another type of bias too, Elder Sander, that I have on my list. If you were to see my list, it's proper. Have y'all familiar with this word propaganda? Propaganda is a type of bias that, you know, the media use to kind of, you know,